Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Professor Menon. It's truly an honor. Let me start something from the home. See, this is actually a session on compassion, how it can help SRC. When you search Google, the word compassion, this is the image which comes. That is the endless knot, which is Buddha's infinite compassion. On the right-hand side, you will see Sikkim tourism logo. So you can see compassion is there in the brand itself. And seriously telling, no other place in this world than to have a compassion-based session than Sikkim. So a big cheers to all of you for this state. And I really mean it actually, because when we entered Sikkim yesterday, the first person I met was a CPO called Arjun. He greeted us at the border. He was there for 1 hour. Every time he was smiling. I really wondered actually, because he's a police. In our place, police, it's very tough to get them smiling all the way. If you smile for 5 minutes, it's okay, normal. But if you are doing it for continuous of 1 hour, then the person is compassionate. And then when we reached the place here, at the bus, someone came to us in the bus. He came to us with the folded hands and he apologized for any troubles on the way. We didn't have any troubles at all. But he still apologized, he explained the procedures, etc. Later I come to know that he's a deputy director of tourism department. See, if you fold the hands, it's okay. But if you go to a person and fold the hand, that is compassion. So truly, I'm totally blessed to be here talking about compassion in SRC. Next slide. Now, my purpose here is to introduce to you a WhatsApp group. They have done a considerable job, but it's a WhatsApp group. It's a lot of uniqueness about the group. It's not at all registered. There's no president, no captain, no rules, no registration needed, no salaries. You can come for 1 day, you can be there for 5 days. Totally unorganized. But it actually started during the Kerala floods. Before that, there's also uniqueness. Today, April 30th is the day when I also started my first baby steps towards disaster response. Because it was this day that we landed at Kathmandu as part of World Medical Council to help the disaster victims. We stayed there for 3-4 weeks, and being with the villagers, being with the people taught me a lot about how to overcome pain, resistance, and how to survive. And lots of love we got. And then this resulted. When the Kerala floods happened in 2018, August, we formed this WhatsApp group. Initial things were like we went for rescues. 600 people we rescued. The unique thing is that we have people from all walks of life. We have doctors, engineers, students, housewives, transgender, specially able people, lawyers. So a mixed group of people who could do a lot of things. Lot of things means it's not big when you see other organizations, registered organizations who have done bigger tasks, but diversified things we did. When COVID came, we could not go out in the floods. We could not go out unlike the floods. So we used technology to serve the government, serve the people. Next slide. The group is sans politics, sans religion, sans state, sans country. If you see on the left side, there are people from the 2 different parties. So when they are not going for response, they fight. But now you can see how they're hugging each other on top of each other. And we have even people from Taiwan supporting us. Next slide. We don't have an office. We meet at restaurants and cafes. Next slide, next slide. See, we did rescues in 2018 and 2019. You can see on the right side, this is how we operate. We operate only via WhatsApp. Next. A very tragic thing, I will not go in detail because we are short of time. This was a landslide where our disaster preparedness, we also have a rescue team. We went there and along with NDRF, we were able to bring out few bodies and give them a dignified funeral. Yes. Next slide, please. Yeah, some of the jobs which we did included construction of new houses. See, we built 14 houses, but the specialty is that we never went for funding outside. It was all funded by ourselves, 100 rupees, 500 rupees. The first donation we received was 100 rupees from a 12th standard student called Devika. And we had clear-cut budget for each houses. 2 lakhs, 10 days, 15 days. So this was, and the houses were disaster resilient, you can see. And such models were later used by many other organizations. Yeah, next slide. Now, when we talk about, see, I have, I think 6 or 7 more minutes. So I'll try to pick up few incidents from our 5 years of journey on compassion, sustainability and resilience. Of the 14 houses we built, this house is special because this used students. It's a house which we built for a 3-member family. Senior most person was 80-year-old. He had a mentally retarded son of 40. But the problem was that they were staying in a public toilet for 2-3 days when the Kerala floods happened. The floods had washed away the 10-shed house. So they didn't have a house. We went to a college nearby and we asked for some help. All the students came out. The students came out in pack and helped us to construct the house. No labor cost. So what I wanted to tell you is that if you reach out to people, if we were volunteers, if we had done maybe 10-15 people, it would have taken 15-20 days. But if you could get the whole student community, it was done in 8 days' time. Next slide. This is even special. We learn compassion from these kids. They are visibly challenged kids of Olesha Blind School, Kottayam. One of their classmates, a 7th standard girl, had lost her house in the Kerala floods. We went to the school and we asked them, what do you want? They said, we want a house for our classmate. We said, we will do it. But they said, we don't want it free. We want to contribute. So what we did was, we used their paintings, the paintings which they made, we auctioned it online. First hour got us 17,000 rupees. In 2 days' time, we could get 3 lakh rupees and the house was done. So this is like, compassion doesn't need to be a senior or junior. Like, it has, everyone has it. So you can see, you could learn a lot from them. Next. We practice inclusiveness in our group. This is a football match which we enjoy. We have transgenders, special kids, us all together in mixed team. We don't, it's not a divided team, so it's a together team. We also have our special members. We take them to beach, put them on beach, they enjoy the water. Next slide. And even better, like what we thought is we should give them a self-esteem. So we created this mark called equals. Equals means every product which we make will have this logo if that is supported by a special community, disabled people, specially able people or transgenders. We even have female sex workers also in our group. Next slide. And the first product which we used that logo was air mask. This is a great story of sustainability out of need, because we were working in the COVID cell for the government, and we found that ambulances were taking 45 to 1 hour to clean and to send another patient, initial COVID days. Disinfection takes 45 minutes. So we made this device which could clear the ambulance or anything in 5 minutes. So this was supported. It was all the people involved whom we met during disaster. As I mentioned, we had diversified people. We also had scientist community. The message here is, maximum, how much diversified your team is, the better you can give results. Next slide. Even the best certificate we got for that. Technology which is installed at every PVR cinema across India. India's biggest. We did free of cost. All the theaters in India, PVR theaters, were having our devices. So that was made by people from the special community and as well as volunteers. We also, thank you so much, and we also developed India's first contactless swab collection machine. A doctor can go in this machine. It's called TRACE, Tracking and Response Automobile Emergency. Second-hand jeeps given by friends or businessmen. It can go out in remote place to collect swab. Unique thing actually at that time. Next slide. Face shields were a problem when a policeman, everybody had to have a face shield in initial COVID days. But it was costing 400 rupees. Everybody cannot afford it. So we devised a 15 rupees face shield using OHP sheets. We went to Chennai in old printing units. We took the OHP sheets and made the face shield. Now it was affordable for everybody. The ASHA workers, the sanitization team, the medical health worker, they all use these face shields. Thank you so much. That is the finance minister, okay. So we have time. This is a story which was directed by you, 2 minutes, okay. I will not go in detail. Dr. Menon's tweet can be, Professor Menon's tweet can be seen here. A small trigger, a small video about a pregnant lady stuck in Italy, which was raised by us, went to the health minister of Karnataka. He ordered a special plane and 256 people from Italy could reach back India on time. So a small thing initiated by a group of volunteers got some results. Next slide. Similarly, we also were involved in another evacuation. It was the first ever Nigerian plane reaching India. We evacuated through ARP support, Indian standard in Nigeria. It came to Cochin and we were support. Obviously, we were just there to trigger it, but definitely decisions were taken by the government and we could do that. Next slide. A medical thing, I will not go into it. When the COVID happened, we used protocols to deliver medicines from top of Kerala to bottom of Kerala. Life-saving medicines. We could not take it through because there are restrictions on the line. So we used district to district. Each biker would stand in one district. He will take the medicine and go to the end of the district. He will transfer it to other district guy. So all volunteers across the state. So we delivered close to 250 patients medicines, life-saving medicines. Next slide. I will conclude now. See, this is again Professor Menon's slogan actually. In Chinese, the word crisis is written in two parts. The first part means danger. The second part means opportunity. We had danger, we were born out of danger, but we use the opportunity to, and technology and resources to bring out some of the big changes in the world. So it is possible. Disasters will come. And regarding compassion, it is everywhere. You don't have to search compassion outside. It cannot be taught in school. It's inside you. The trees which give you oxygen, they are compassionate. Every person who was born in this world, he opens his eyes to a nurse, a mother. He sees compassion first. Second, rest all things secondary. Your mothers are the best brand ambassadors. So that is it. It is a driving tool. In Latin, actually, the word compassion is written as compati. Compati. Come means to be with. Pati or pathos means suffering. It means to suffer. So if there is sufferings, compassion has to be there, and it is the driving force in building a resilient and sustainable community. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shyam. This has been one of the very passionate involvements and engagements with local communities and people's needs, which are actually communicated to the WhatsApp group, and then they actually even mobilized and evacuated more than 700 Indians from Rome and from Milan in Italy. And that's also another story. And that was the first time when the people who were stranded in Italy in the airports in Rome and Milan were actually evacuated and brought to Delhi, and then they were tested whether they were actually exposed to the people who were COVID positive. And so this is also the beginning, much before the Vande Bharat mission started. This is the first evacuation which was done. Thank you very much. Now we have Ms. Karen Mowad, who is actually joining us. She is the United Nations Empower Women's 75 new global champions for women's economic empowerment in 2015, and she was one of these champions advocating for the cause of worldwide women's economic empowerment. She is the CEO and founder of the Hummingbird Associates, an international management consulting firm dedicated towards developing the human and business side of orthodontic practices, and they help clients strengthen the ties between sound business practices, information technology, and clinical orthodontics. They also design and implement strategic systems to propel a practice to reach financial goals and improve profitability by diligently working on these practices and managing change and developing marketing plans, decreasing the stress of the people involved, and also creating professional development programs to enhance the staff longevity. We're very happy to welcome Karen and request her to kindly initiate her presentation.
In 2010, when Haiti experienced a catastrophic 7 magnitude earthquake. Its epicenter was 25 kilometers west of Port-au-Prince, Haiti's capital. By the 24th of January, at least 52 aftershocks measuring 4.5 or greater had been recorded. An estimated 3 million people were affected by the quake. And on January 27th, nearly 170,000 bodies had been recovered. Reports claimed that 20,000 commercial buildings and 225,000 homes had collapsed or were severely damaged. Communication systems, air, land, and sea transport facilities, hospitals, and electrical networks had been damaged by the earthquake, which hampered rescue and aid efforts. There was confusion over who was in charge. Air traffic congestion and problems with prioritization of flights further complicated early relief work. Port-au-Prince's morgues were quickly overwhelmed. Tens of thousands of bodies were buried in mass graves. Thursday, January 21, 2010, just 9 days after the quake, Diane Ratanandaswamy and I flew to Haiti with instructions from spiritual leader and humanitarian Mata Amritandamayi Devi, lovingly known as Amma, to do what we could to help and to assess the situation to see what could be done in the future. I was not at all sure what we would find nor how I could possibly help, but Amma gave clear instructions, and I quote, "Develop an inner expansiveness of knowledge and awareness, the capacity to imbibe and understand the sorrows and mental agony of others, and the maturity and strength to hold them close to you and console them with love and compassion." The airport had been closed down as the runways were not functional, but miraculously we were able to secure 2 seats on the first private plane that was allowed to land in Haiti after the quake. On our flight was the late Dr. Paul Farmer, physician from Mass General in Boston, who as an intern had identified Haiti as the poorest country in the world and had compassionately set up a chain of clinics throughout the country to help in case of a catastrophe. His work is featured in Tracy Kidder's book, Mountains Beyond Mountains, a book worth reading to learn about building sustainability in countries ravaged by natural disasters. Once off the plane, we were guided to a large tent being constructed for physicians to perform medical procedures and to sleep. They generously invited us to sleep on cots there. There was no food and no water available, nor were there any bathroom facilities except the field outside the tent. Multidisciplinary doctors on short rotations formed the core of the medical response teams. The most common injury-related surgical procedures were treatment for orthopedic trauma and surgical amputation. It became apparent that earthquake preparedness planning for densely populated areas in resource-limited settings, such as Haiti, should account for injury-related medical, surgical, and rehabilitation needs that must be met immediately after the event. The number of people being treated inside the tent and waiting outside was overwhelming. Diane Ratanandaswamy and I looked at each other and didn't even need to exchange words. We dropped our sleeping bags down on a cot and immediately moved to the sea of people to comfort those we could. He moved toward the men and I moved in the direction of the women. Neither of us were fluent in Creole nor French, but it didn't matter. The people were so grateful to be listened to and to be hugged. We all just cried together. People were in so much pain, both physically and emotionally. We put our arms around them and let them cry. Amma's words played constantly in my head, lending a helping hand to a neglected soul, feeding the hungry, giving the sad and dejected a compassionate smile. This is the language of love. The day after our arrival, the United Nations indicated that the emergency phase of the relief operation was drawing to a close, and on the following day, the Haitian government officially called off the search for survivors. We walked down some of the treacherous streets that were almost unpassable for people, much less cars. Houses had become piles of rubble and dust. There were signs begging for food and water, with arrows indicating where people too injured to move were buried underneath the rubble. And children were wandering lost along the streets, having lost both their parents. Again, we were reminded of Anna's words. In times of tragedies, our duty is to lend a helping hand to those in grief, and thus light lamps of kindness and compassion. Of those that survived, 1.5 million people became homeless overnight. Many people whose home no longer existed moved to the Central Park in Port-au-Prince and other town squares throughout the country. Families sectioned off small areas where they could sleep, but there were few tarps for tents, and the monsoon rains were threatening. Amos says to really love God is to have compassion for the poor and to serve them. We had to figure out how we could help. The immediate need was comforting people and somehow finding food. After talking with many people, a source of rice and beans was found. We filled many bags with the rice and beans and gave them out. Amma is also instructed, don't be discouraged by your incapacity to dispel darkness from the world. Light your little candle and step forward. When we returned to the U.S., we knew there still was much more to be done. We contacted the owner of Lamar, one of the largest billboard companies in the world, to see if they had waterproof material that could provide cover for the people sleeping in the parks. Sure enough, they did, and were willing to work with us to ship the tarps to Haiti. Amma's empathy and concern for disaster survivors is so complete that she responds to every aspect of their situation, not only fulfilling their material and emotional needs, but also keeping an eye on their future. Her provision of long-term support for disaster survivors around the world has carried thousands through the darkest periods of their lives into the light of a hopeful future. Amma gave instructions to find 25 children who had lost one or both parents in the quake. She wanted to provide full scholarships for these children so they would stay in school through high school regardless of their current age. She explained that education can help children develop the skills and knowledge they need to contribute to their communities. When children are educated, they're more likely to be able to find jobs, start businesses, and participate in civic life. Education can help children develop the resilience they need to cope with adversity, and they're more likely to be able to understand and appreciate the perspectives of others, which helps to develop the leadership skills that are needed to make a positive impact on the world. In addition to these benefits, we knew that investing in children's education can also help to promote economic growth, reduce poverty, and improve health outcomes. Payment of $50 a month was to be made to each child's mother, if alive, or to a female guardian, not directly to the school. So March 23rd, we flew back to Haiti for 6 days to find children who met the criteria of good grades and a likelihood of succeeding. Banking also had to be set up to be able to save money, move money from one country to another. Amma said if we located a good school with honest people, they would tell us which children were truly in need of support. We had to find the right schools. In the confusion of all the decisions to be made, I lost my self-confidence to make the right choices. But thankfully, Diane Swami reminded me about Amma's words. Don't be fearful of darkness. The power to illuminate the darkest of nights is within you. So have self-confidence, confidence in your own self. After visiting and interviewing the top 5 schools and talking with the administrators and teachers, we selected 2 of the schools. A mechanism was set up for confirming the neediness of the children and following them throughout each school year. And we then started the process of selecting the children, talking with them, meeting with their parent or guardian, and then we gave them photos of Amma, explaining who she is and why she wanted to help. There were many tears as fractured families realized they had some hope in the middle of so much despair. They were overwhelmed with Alma's compassion. 5 months later, in August of that same year, we returned to Haiti to meet with the children. Still, the country looked ravaged by the natural disaster, but slowly life was returning to a new normal. Yes, the congested tent city in the middle of Port-au-Prince was still teeming with people. But now donations were finding their way into the country. New buildings were being constructed. The roads were being repaired. We met with all the students and their mothers. Some were in kindergarten, others in elementary school, a few in junior high. We confirmed that they were receiving their funds and that they were well settled in school. The students sang songs for us and had prepared snacks. What a change from 5 months earlier. Later, during one of Alma's U.S. tours, some of our older Haitian students came to meet Alma in Atlanta to thank her for her generosity. They said they spoke for the entire group, that none of them would have been able to stay in school without this outpouring of support. That they realized that they now had an obligation to give back to their country. We also discussed what these students wanted to do when they graduated. All wanted to become doctors after seeing the intense need for medical care after the earthquake. They were in tears when they told Alma they will never forget her love and compassion. Alma says spirituality begins and culminates in compassion, and that if we could transform compassion from a mere word into a path of action, we would be able to solve 90% of the world's humanitarian problems. Hopefully, this story will inspire those present to recommend a compassion-based approach as an integral part of disaster preparedness and response. Please make compassion the foundation as you develop your C20 policy recommendations for the G20 about the gaps in vulnerable communities and in existing policies for disaster risk reduction and disaster resilience. For Alma, compassion is the most important factor in our lives. The compassion that Alma showed to Haiti in the aftermath of the earthquake is a reminder that we are all connected. When one community suffers, we all suffer. By showing compassion, we can help to make the world a better place for everyone. Let me conclude with Alma's poignant words. When love fills the heart, it expresses itself as compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was a very moving intervention from the heart based on experiences working in some of those extremely devastating earthquakes which the world has seen in 2010 when more than 300,000 people lost their lives. I'm very grateful that Mr. Prashant Nair IAS has joined us, and so I would like to introduce him once again. Mr. Prashant Nair IAS is a 2007 batch of the Indian Administrative Service, and he secured his 4th rank in the Union Public Service Commission, joining the 2007 batch of the Indian Administrative Service. He is a law graduate from Kerala, and he has handled tourism, taxation, roads, water supply, skill development, and also anchored 2 World Bank funded projects, Jalanidhi and the Kerala State Transport Project. Mr. Prashant Nair is one of the very distinguished administrators in the Kerala cadre of the Indian Administrative Service, and he has also acted in a movie which has gone to the Cannes Festival, and also directed a movie which has also gone to Cannes Festival. So, and he's fondly called Brother Collector Bro by the people of Kerala and the people whom have been in the districts where he served as district collector. He has introduced a concept of Sulaimani in Calicut, in Kozhikode district of Kerala. And I welcome Mr. Prashant Nair and request him to kindly initiate his intervention. Can you unmute your video? Yeah, here's some online. Yeah, we can see you. Welcome. I hope you heard what we were talking about you. Yeah, you muted. Kindly bear with the technical glitches. Okay. We also have Mr. Gopinathan Achankulangara, who's joined. He's a senior Indian diplomat who has served in the UN General Assembly and in the Joint Inspection Unit, the only independent oversight body of the UN system. He was first appointed to the UN body, the Joint Inspection Unit, for a term of from January 2013 to December 2017, which was later extended. As the chairman of the JIU, Mr. Gopinathan has played a very instrumental and strategic role in the United Nations. He's a true visionary and leader, and he's a long-standing well-wisher of the Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham and Mada Amritanandamayi Mutt. It's a great privilege and an honor to welcome Mr. Gopinath and then request him to kindly initiate his presentation. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Professor Govinda, thank you very much for that over-generous but utterly undeserved introduction. I'm not going to try and match the eloquence of Snehama for about compassion. Instead, I'm going to take a safe route and not speak about compassion at all, leaving it to some Puja Swamiji, Snehama and others to speak about compassion. But I wish to speak a little bit on issues, with your permission, as I think it will be a kind of responsibility on my part to do so in the context of the C20 activities in general, and also the conclave that Dr. Manisha Ramesh and her associates have convened in this particular meeting, and the contributions that the C20 under the chairmanship of Amma hopes to make to the G20 process in coming weeks and months. The first area that I wish to address is sustainable development and the environment cluster. Over the past 5 decades, India has made substantive contributions to the evolution of the environment-related cluster, in which we should include protection of the natural environment, a cause that is very dear to Amma's heart, climate change, and sustainable development, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in the UN context. When these disciplines began evolving the 70s, in the 80s, and in the 90s, India was in the forefront of member states of the United Nations, articulating the concerns and interests of the developing countries. For example, many may not remember at the 1972 Stockholm Conference, then Prime Minister Srimati Indira Gandhi described poverty as the greatest polluter. She also enunciated the principle of polluter pays. Here I wish to pay a tribute to the outstanding Indian diplomat who made the most substantive contributions to that evolution. Not just India, but the whole developing world owes a deep debt of gratitude to Ambassador Chandrasekhar Dasgupta, who sadly left us on 2nd of March this year. I was blessed and privileged to witness firsthand how he developed the concept of male responsibility, diluted subsequently as common but differentiated responsibilities. The interrelationship between poverty and environmental degradation, the recognition of the need for equity, respective capabilities and responsibility when dealing with climate change, the imperative of new and additional financial resources for supporting the efforts of the developing countries. He then went on to author some of the most important and celebrated articles of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that addressed the concerns and interests of the developing countries. I wish to remind us of the nature of the Global Compact, or the common understanding and agreement and legal obligations and commitments that the international community as a whole adopted as part of the Rio process during 1992 to 1995, including the Rio Declaration, the Climate Change Convention, the Convention on Biodiversity, and the Convention on Acidification. Unfortunately, the developing countries themselves failed miserably to preserve and safeguard their interests embedded in the Global Compact of that period, starting with the post-Kyoto phase, all the way through the Copenhagen and Paris conferences, resulting in its considerable erosion and undermining by obliterating the need for recognizing equity, differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, and by obliterating the distinction between developed and developing country commitments. Against this backdrop, I come to the second issue that I wish to address, namely the role that CSOs and NGOs, academic and research institutions, and think tanks can and should play in reorienting the debate on some of the important concepts that animate discussions on climate change in the present times. I'm referring here to areas such as climate neutrality, carbon offsets, net zero emission targets, sustainable investments, and so on. Often there is an unfortunate tendency to adopt lock, stock, and barrel the thinking that emanates from Western sources, Western countries, Western institutions, Western think tanks, without any critical examination of their feasibility for implementation by the countries of the global south. My experience stems from the Joint Inspection Unit's review of mainstreaming environmental sustainability in the management functions of the organizations of the United Nations system, a review that I had led for the unit in 2020. We found that the provisions, for example, of offsetting unavoidable emissions have been misused, and options to purchase carbon credits vary in the levels of credibility and verification, especially those purchased from the so-called voluntary markets. The review found that despite the existence of guidelines and investment committees, finance and budget services of the United Nations agencies continue to face challenges in moving away from financial investment institutions, including private ones, that invest in harmful environmental activities such as fossil fuels. In general, United Nations organizations seem to lack investment policies that call for divesting from financial investments that are harmful to the environment or are not environmentally sustainable. I should like to refer in particular to the so-called net zero emission targets by 2050 in this context. The net zero emission targets by 2050 undermine completely and totally the principle of equity, common but differentiated responsibilities of developing countries, and respective capabilities. Taking India's own situation to illustrate this point, first, it would require India to immediately scrap all existing coal-based power plants and factories, or alternatively, retrofit them with carbon capture and storage technology. This would entail astronomical costs at a time when the Indian economy is already reeling from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Second, it would hit India's march towards what the Prime Minister Modi, called Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India policy. It would hit it hard. It would necessitate an immediate switchover to imported existing clean energy technologies at a huge cost, denying our own industry the time required for indigenization, for development of affordable indigenous technologies. Let us recall that the US launched a complaint against us in the World Trade Organization when India took some modest measures to promote domestic manufacture of solar cells and modules. Third, we need to examine the trade-related implications of surrendering our principal position on common but differentiated responsibilities. For example, the European Union is set to impose levies on carbon-intensive imports, even from the developing countries. It would be naive to think that the countries that are calling upon India to adopt a 2050 net zero target are motivated purely by altruistic concerns unrelated to their own commercial interests. I should like to mention here that in all such cases, we forget to constantly question we forget to constantly question, critique, and challenge the prevailing orthodoxy imported mostly from Western sources in this and other important arena, including intellectual property. What practical, implementable, and meaningful recommendations can and should the C20 bring forward and submit to the G20, especially that go beyond the traditional ones relating to advocacy and calls for additional financial resources? The CSOs and NGOs can make a significant contribution to the international discourse on the topics of this conclave. Most of the contributions in these areas have traditionally come again from Western sources and tend to reflect conditions, experiences, and challenges in the Western societies. They do not always necessarily incorporate or address conditions and concerns prevailing in the developing countries and the specific challenges that they face, including in accessing, adapting, and utilizing the rapid technological advances of recent years for addressing these challenges and finding appropriate solutions, including barriers faced from technology deniers and barriers erected in the name of or in the guise of intellectual property rights. Contributions from the developing countries have been far fewer in comparison. CSOs and NGOs from the Global South, academic and research institutions and think tanks from the Global South can and should articulate a more grounded perspective rooted in their own societies and deal with the issues and possible solutions that suit them better. I hope that the participants in this conclave will find it useful to discuss at least some of these elements and bring to bear their perspectives based on the wealth of their own experience. I also hope that the conclave will produce actionable work plans to take forward its agenda. I wish your deliberations every success. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Actually given extremely valuable inputs, which will actually feed into the policy brief which we are preparing and submitting to the G20 in the next few weeks. Now I have great pleasure in introducing Dr. Adishivan. He is a PhD. He holds a PhD from the University of Amsterdam with his research focusing on displacement and poverty. He was also a research fellow with the National University of Malaysia for over 15 years, and he has been involved in several technical committees on poverty and mobility, including the inaugural UNDP country report on the Malaysia Human Development Report in 2013. Dr. Adishivan has a vast experience in doing cross-border relief work in South Asia region, and since 2004, he has worked in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Nepal, and India, and his area of focus is mainly on urgent medical relief in major mega disasters. And in 2015, he was appointed by the Malaysian National Security Council to coordinate the relief work in Nepal in the 2015 Nepal earthquake. And in 2018, the Prime Minister of Malaysia supported the proposal to render humanitarian relief during the diphtheria outbreak among the Rohingya population in the relief camps in Cox's Bazar. And since September 2018, he has shifted his focus to viral hepatitis C among the Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar. And he's currently leading a multi-institution, multi-country team in planning and implementing mass screening and treating of hepatitis C among the displaced Rohingya population in the mega camps in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, Cox's Bazar. And for his work during the Kashmir, Pakistan earthquake in 2005, Dr. Adi Shivan was awarded the Tamga-e Aiser by the President of Pakistan. He is a chair of the Amriteshwari Foundation in Malaysia. We're very honored to have Dr. Adi Shivan joining us, and he's also one of the international coordinators of the C20 Working Group on Sustainable and Resilient Communities. Dr. Adi, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Menon. Firstly, allow me to thank Amrita University, in particular Professor Manisha, Professor Vinod Menon, and Dr. Sudha for recommending me to be here today. I truly feel honored to be in the presence of so distinguished people and their inspiring works. It's truly amazing for me these past 2 days. After the session yesterday, I told myself that I should not talk about compassion in the sense as an activity, as something to be promoted. No. Following the footstep of Ambassador Gopi Achan, I will take a different route. Okay, I will wear the hat of an academic and try to explain compassion as a tool for research, how this can be done. This is not new. Research on compassion is not new. And discussion on compassion is as old as recorded debates from even the Greek times. There's a lot of discussion there. But the mainstream scholarship sees compassion from a very different angle. It is time, I think, to give new perspectives to compassion. Now, we have to distinguish two approaches to compassion. One is activism. So promote compassion as part of activism of an organization, religious group, so on and so forth. The other one is purely in the realm of scholarship. So here, the question of theory and praxis will come. That will be an art, I think, of the person who is going to balance it. Now, coming back to the scholarship, we are going to have a lot of challenges. Okay, I've prepared something yesterday, and I would like to share with the audience. My talk will be relevant to teachers in the universities, for postgraduate students, and others interested in the research questions. Okay, so for others, you may feel bored, but please bear with me. The paper will be distributed so that you can give your comments, and we try to develop criticisms that can help us to improve the paper further. It's a very brief. The focus will be on a very technical aspects of developing a body of knowledge in social studies. Okay? So these will be the compassion-based actions from myself in this forum. Okay. Compassion as a motivation to perform impersonal good actions, either individually or collectively, is generally acceptable and can receive consensus among scholars and intellectuals. There's no problem. There's no much problem there. In fact, it is quite common to find policy papers, research papers that employ compassion as their main working definition. When we do some papers, we try to have a definition for a concept, for example, in this instance, compassion. So as a working definition, it is quite acceptable. It is mainly to describe and explain what's seen as a cultural characteristic of a altruistic social behavior. So this is there. It is allowed in a mainstream academia. It is okay to have all this. However, when compassion is used as a research tool to develop a comprehensive research framework, the same consensus will be seriously contested. The main reason is the underdeveloped and under-theorized nature and complexity of compassion as a research tool. It's a problem. There's a lot of work need to be done there. This is usually magnified by different schools of social thought, and that perceive compassion as belonging to religious or spiritual domain and not scientific. That kind of mindset is very prevalent. It is not scientific, it is not secular, and it is not value neutral as an instrument of research. Some others view the introduction of compassion as part of religious and ideological activism. At the most, compassion is only part of a cultural trait of the subject under study. As such, the need to develop compassion within a rigorous and conservative tradition of social knowledge or theory building is imperative. It cannot take a certain school of thoughts and try to contain within that school of thought. I think compassion has to take a much broader space to explain and be used as a research tool. In order to build a systematic body of knowledge on compassion, the three fundamental pillars of social knowledge building need to be rigorously developed and tested. It needs to be validated with empirical studies as well. In this paper, I'll briefly discuss the epistemological, the most important, the epistemological, the origin of knowledge, the ontological, and the methodological considerations in view of developing compassion as a systematic research and investigation tool. I shall briefly explain the three important pillars of building social knowledge in a reverse order by starting off with methodology, then ontology, and finally epistemology. This is to avoid abstraction and philosophical arguments on the onset and it's better to get straight to areas where we are familiar with in our teaching and research. I will try to provide some examples. On a methodological front, field-based research should be an integral part of knowledge building on compassion. Today, we know in the social sciences, in the economics, in medical field, public health, where compassion is an integral part of research, it is mainly developed in a statistical model. Now, I am in the opinion that it should have a fieldwork component. Without going to the field, I think there will be a lot of deficiency developed along the process. A field-based research will allow a student of compassion to appreciate and comprehend the living world and meaningfully interpolate aggregated social data. For instance, the census data. How, if not, in my opinion, it is not going to be a very meaningful outcome. The sort of triangulation approach will allow emotional and intellectual outlook of the subject under study to be included. This will be true regardless of the unit of analysis. We in the research are always confronted with the question, what is the unit of analysis? Can be individual, family, community, or nation. Most importantly, it will be congruent with the direction of social and economic studies since the past decades that try to develop a multidisciplinary and multidimensional method of research for comprehensive social study. Examples, we can see many. In social sciences and economics, the total dependence on aggregated data to develop statistical models is increasingly seen as a major drawback. There's already a lot of problem in the existing scholarship. For example, in the among the economists that use aggregated data, that have been traditionally using aggregated data, now they want to, they are calling on the need to have other forms of data, particularly that related to field and ethnographic research. The debates among economics on the need to include ethnographic field data is a wake-up call for all of us. For a quick reference, the debates among economists in London School of Economics can be referred. It's available in the YouTube. The same tendency can also be seen among political scientists and sociologists. On a different note, the empirical data and aggregated data, when employed together, can better show the function of structure and agency. It's a huge problem how to connect the structure and agency in explaining the problem within a particular society or particular unit of analysis. Now, this approach will open the door for a much more meaningful interpolation of data. On an ontological aspect, human behavior, regardless whether it's social, economic, or political, cannot be measured only through rational action, as shown and developed by rational choice theories. These approaches will see human beings as essentially a utility-seeking agents. All human actions are deemed as motivated by gain, and as such, rationality is seen as efforts to derive the gain. An action of sacrificing one's gain is seen as altruistic. The word altruistic is an inherently negative connotated term, a non-rational behavior. In the same vein, an overtly market determinant approaches or approaches that view human behavior as essentially cultural can lead to the exclusion of complex human behavior. The ontological consideration should also shun nihilistic approaches that tend to approach compassion as social construct or mere narratives, but instead view it as a struggle to understand compassion as an internalized process. I will go to the paper you can read. So I'll go to the last part, the epistemological part. What should be the base of the knowledge to develop compassion as an instrument of research? We can start with the age-old question, whether empirical foundation is sufficient for the assumptions on objective existence. It has been debated ever since. This cannot be resolved here, but it will help us to explore the multidimensionality of compassion with larger knowledge system. For instance, in the ancient Greek philosophy, the question of whether compassion is innate, is primordial, is within us, whether it is innate or it is acquired, as was raised. Relativists insist on acquired doctrine, but if we were to contrast it with Indian philosophy, the answer is compassion is innate. The challenge is how to juxtapose the epistemological base within the mainstream scholarship, but at the same time to create coherent ontology and methodology to present consistent arguments. Okay, in conclusion, it should be noted that many spiritual religious traditions tend to be teleological in the explanation. It's always everything has a reason to happen, but less focus on why it happened, what is the cause. So that is a tendency. Now, if we are to follow Eastern philosophy, by and large, that will be the case. How to attend to this issue and at the same time to develop a comprehensive and systematic study of compassion will be the challenge. Knowing that the need to develop compassion as a framework of research is never more critical than now. May that help us to grapple with these technical issues. With that, I will conclude my research, my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adi. Actually, Dr. Adi has now put the compassionate approaches into a framework, and he has given 3 approaches, and I'm sure that we will actually have opportunities for discussing this further. We are happy that Mr. Prashant Nair is now online again, and so we would like to have him deliver his intervention. Mr. Prashant Nair, over to you. See you now. Yes, thank you.
English, which entirely on my side, because I'm starting. I've been fortunate to listen to really interesting insights, and so I wouldn't dare to repeat any of those, but just focus on a couple of points. One is that, as all speakers just now mentioned, compassion is the key. Compassion is the key to not just a resilient society, but also for the entire administrative system that runs the society, for the country, for the state itself. Compassion is the key. But unfortunately, that's not being realized or really understood for whatever reason. The priority that should have been accorded to compassion in policy formulation, for instance, is appalling. There's no way. Why or how do I see compassion as a relevant factor in policy formulation, and as well as in the long run, representing a resilient society? I would like to explain or try to share what I felt through my experience of the interplay of administration and compassion in tackling issues that the society is grappling with. We all see that when there is a crisis, say a flood or earthquake, you have people coming together, obviously, and they elevate themselves beyond, they transcend themselves beyond, their priorities change. They exhibit an altruism. I remember when we were all participating in the rescue operation for the floods of 2018 in Kerala. We had thousands of youngsters coming together from all parts of the world, and they actually didn't know whom they are trying to help. It's totally unknown strangers for whom they were trying to raise resources or even risking their lives for the rescue operation. How would that happen? It's quite evident that there is an emotional connect involved. It's not dry theory, but it's emotion. It's absolutely moving. It is that space where you transcend and become one with the other person, that you think for the other person, that empathy element comes in. We must have, most of us who have read research studies of Dr. V.S. Ramachandran, where he speaks of mirror neurons, where your neurons kind of experience what you see, the suffering that someone else is undergoing, and you feel for him or her, and try to alleviate the pain or whatever the other person is going through. And at that moment, if you actually see someone's finger cut, a bit of blood oozing out, immediately you feel for that person. You assume that it's your finger that's cut. And then the very next moment you realize, no, that's not mine. This is his or hers, and this is my finger. I'm safe. So you differentiate yourself from the other person. But naturally, I suppose we all do feel for the other person. That's the reality. That's the original we. It's a really bit of selfishness that we bring in to differentiate ourselves from others, our interests from others, That is what ultimately leads to conflict. And in an administrative setup, I found that in governance especially, we cannot have a compassionate administration and a non-compassionate society. We can only have a compassionate society, which is governed by a compassionate administration. The society or whatever is the mass that gets reflected onto the administrative system as well. Here we need to realize the limitations of administration, of governance, of the administrative machinery, which doesn't have compassion as a key element. We theoretically would like to have administration that is very rational, emotionless, and detached from whatever would otherwise cover your decision making. Any sort of emotion, for instance. So you will find bureaucrats taking positions which don't seem to be kind at times. They think that taking a very rigid position is great because you're doing what bureaucracy ought to do. You should be detached from everything, but that's not the way I do it. And the system, because it's designed in a very dry and unemotional manner, the way it imparts administration is also different. For instance, when you have a children's home, an orphanage, or an old age home, or a mental health facility, we find that over the years, the budgetary allocation for most of these institutions go down. At least that's what I've seen in my experience. And you also find that because these people are not vocal enough to raise their own issues, especially in the case of a mental health center where I had an opportunity to work in Coimbatore. What was very obvious was the apathy of the general, the policymakers, the society, the people around, because they don't see the patient, the inmates there as one amongst them. The disconnect is too obvious. And the system, because the administrative system has been designed in a very neutral and impartial and unemotional manner. They also don't take that extra effort to get involved or console or find a solution. See, children in an orphanage, for instance, in a government institution especially, how would they be celebrating their Christmas, New Year, Diwali, Onam, whatever? You just imagine how our kids are celebrated, how these kids celebrate. Would they be getting gifts? Would the government make a procurement of gifts? If so, would anyone still have life? Or would they have a choice? Would they get the opportunity to choose their clothing when they buy for Diwali? These are questions which never come up in a policy discussion. And why would it? The point is, these are the things which government cannot do, which an administrative system cannot do, but the public can do, civil society can do. But again, when we say civil society, it's the individual with a heart who does this. For the satisfaction of just doing that. Sometimes we club this whole thing with charity. And unfortunately, over the years, charity has become more of celebration of poverty than anything else. When you do something, the celebration or the publicity associated with that is far more overwhelming. And you're the person who gets involved in this, he or she finds happiness from that celebration by seeing the hoardings or maybe advertisements, whatever goes around about this person doing something good. Definitely that's good, but then taking photographs and celebrating it without even thinking of the dignity aspect of the beneficiary, I think the happiness that you derive from that is distinct from the happiness which you get by enacting an act of compassion. The happiness that you get from that very act of compassion and the happiness that you get from the publicity related to that act of compassion or charity or whatever are different, entirely different. Can we have a system redesigned where the focus goes to the inner self? The very act of compassion should be promoted, and how do we do that? See, it's very easy to promote behavioral change that is associated with dopamine discharge. We generally, we are all now addicted with dopamine discharge. We keep wanting for more. That's very external, whereas the kind of happiness or contentment that you get out of release of oxytocin and endorphin, which is more to do with acts of empathy, charity, or compassion in one word, is different. Whether we are making this distinction has to be understood. I don't think even now, most of us differentiate this. I don't think most of us really understand that we need to focus on the very act of compassion and the satisfaction that emanates from that, which is the positive reinforcement which should go to the society at large, to the individuals, and to the system as a whole. When we designed and rolled out compassionate curriculum, some of the pillars, the decisions, basic decisions which we took were that we will not have photography, we will not celebrate charity, we will not be showing the faces of any of the beneficiaries or the people who do this charity or contribute as volunteers. And volunteerism is one major aspect which I feel should be integrated with governance, because governance of this kind, where you need compassion in action, compassion cannot be exhibited by an individual on orders of an official. Just by saying that you ought to do this, nobody is going to feel that. Getting something done through payment is also different. So when you go for volunteerism, the beauty is that you have lots of people contributing either in kind or in money, but then the essential outcome that comes out, that ignites the compassionate, overwhelming flow that just starts off and it never stops. The reinforcement is the feel good that comes out of that act of compassion. I don't know how clearly I've been able to articulate this aspect. So what I'm trying to say is that voluntary aspect has to be there, which should not be restricted to only occasions of crisis. It's occasions of crisis, I really understand. People really do come out. When you have natural disasters and all that, you find people overwhelmingly pouring out and feeling for the other person. But what happens to other times? Where do they disappear? The very same people who come out, collaborate and co-create and make magic happen at times of disaster, go back into their selfish shells. It's the very same people who behave quite differently when the occasion changes. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you are able to continue, if you are able to keep on reinforcing the exhibition of compassion in a very subtle manner, that is the magic that can create a lot of change in all the countries. Because we actually have surplus. We actually, suppose we take the case of India, we have enough resources to ensure that each and every child is educated. We have resources to ensure that nobody goes hungry. When we started off this Operation Suleiman in Conclave, where it's a very simple scheme of ensuring that nobody goes hungry in the city, very closely modeled on the food on the wall concept. So people who have a bit of surplus contribute to a system where the hungry people can avail food with dignity without being exposed that they don't have money. They become just like any customer in a hotel or a restaurant. So to facilitate that, to enable that, the only thing which we actually had to do was to connect the dots, the haves and the have-nots, people who are willing to help and people who are the so-called beneficiaries. Just to connect that, you need a credible entity, and the government, in many cases, can be that connector. The government can be a genuine diagnoser of the issues and get people on board to connect and solve our issues directly without acting as an intermediary. So this was a model which we tried out and we thought it was quite successful. Not just by the volume of work that was done, not just by the volume of contributions that came into these children's homes and old age homes, or the scholarships which we provided for the kids, which again during the floods we could take up scholarships for more than 25,000 kids who were affected in the flood. But this was all possible without publicizing, without making a hue and cry, just by connecting people who were willing to contribute to those who wanted the help. And we always kept saying that the beneficiary is not the person who is actually receiving something but the other person, because this your one act of compassion is actually transforming you. It's changing you for the good, and you are actually being happy at the end of the day.
So Mr. Prashant, we have to move into the next session because we have the honorable coming in for the valedictory session, and so we have to conclude this session. I'm sure that your good governance interventions would actually be some kind of inspiration for people to Google you and also to see and learn more about you and about the work which you have been doing. I want to thank all the distinguished speakers who have joined this particular session. May I request Dr. Sudha Darlikati to kindly join us. We would like you to felicitate the speakers here. Dr. Adishivan.
Thank you so much.
Also to Mr. Shamkuru. Thank you very much for all of you who have been joining us both in person and also online. We are really sorry that we will not be able to entertain any interventions right now from the floor as an open house discussions, because we will have to reassemble very soon. We will have a brief tea break and then join for the session. Over to you.
I'm sorry to be the bad guy again. We will not be having any tea breaks now. due to paucity of time. Thank you, Professor Menon, for moderating this session, and thank you, speakers, for your valuable talks. We will right away move on to the 2 parallel roundtable sessions. I think we can begin in the next 10 minutes or so. If you are able to grab your cuppa, then I think it should be good. The roundtable on spiritual love and compassionate approach as driving forces for sustainable and resilient communities will be held at this seminar hall. The second roundtable on sustainable and resilient practices prevalent in indigenous communities will be held in the conference room outside. We shall start the breakout sessions sharp at 3:45 p.m. Please be mindful of this time. Everyone, please be seated by 3:40 p.m. for the respective roundtable sessions. Thank you. Also, I'm sharing the email ID where you can send your queries and suggestions for further policy formulation and onward submission to G20. It's src.c20india@am.amrita.edu. Thank you. Vice Chairman of Mata Amrit Anandmay Math and Troika member C20 India. I would like to invite the Chair, Swamiji, to please take over the session.
Om Amriteshwariya Namaha. I humbly bow down at Amma's Lotus feet, my namaskarams, love and greetings to all the participants and also the delegates. My namaskarams, love and greetings to everyone. So the topic of this discussion is, before that I would like to introduce my speakers. His Excellency Mustafa Jawara, High Commissioner of the Republic of the Gambia, and Ambassador Margaret Quaygere. Sorry if I mispronounced. Yeah. And I also have Sri Sonam Bhutia, Principal, SIHNS, Sikkim. Professor Vinod Menon, Dr. Bhavani Rao, and myself, Swami Amrita Swarupananda Puri. So the topic of this session is spiritual love and a compassionate approach as driving forces for sustainable and resilient communities. Let me just give a brief introduction before we start the session, before I start inviting the speakers, the respected speakers. Our NGO has created an organization, a spiritual activity by the name Amrita Kudumbam, which means Amma's family, the family of the mother, or the immortal family. And each of these groups is constituted of several families, and at present we have 25,000 families. These families will get together to do spiritual practices and service every week. And recently I was conversing with a small group of ladies who belong to this group, this Amrita Kudumbam, and they shared something touching and inspiring with me. These people, these ladies, they were basically from lower middle class families, and coming from poor families, these ladies toiled the whole day to make ends meet. The story they shared with me brought tears in my eyes. Every day they saved a meager amount from their daily wages, and once a month they buy rice and vegetables with the money thus saved. They cook the food and take them to a nearby orphanage to feed the poor children there. These so-called poor ladies, because as for me, they are richer than anyone else, even the richest, because their consciousness level is much higher than the richest person. So they spend the whole day with the children, telling them stories from the scriptures, feeding them and playing with them. And this is an example of the kind of transformation Amma brings into people's lives in all sections of society, both poor and rich. This is compassion in action. And this happens in both rich and poor alike. In contrast to this, I recently happened to overhear a mother telling his son, a boy of around 7 or 8 years old, and the mother was lovingly telling her son, don't try to help anyone or try to be loving to people. Just mind your own business. So I couldn't help asking the mother, is being loving and kind such a bad quality? The mother responded, I don't know. But I don't want others to exploit my child. The world today, as all of us are aware of, because of all the cruel things that happen all around us, perhaps there is some truth in what the mother told her son. However, that is not at all a good reason to tell her son not to be loving and compassionate. Because love and compassion is not for someone else. It is for one's own upliftment. It's for one's own growth. It's for one's own transformation. Both internal and external. So that's just an introduction. Now, my question to my respected panelists. We live in a world where people consider love, compassion, as I explained in the two examples I gave, love and compassion, etc., to be weaknesses. Some parents even advise their children not to be compassionate, as in the example. The thing is, they see science and technology as important. Math is indispensable. An aggressive military is crucial. And polarization and war as integral parts of life. And for them, love and compassion are not priorities. So with science and technology and electronic gadgets overpowering the lives of people all over the world, and now we have AI, ChatGPT, and the younger generation is going to be negatively influenced than positively. So here, this is the situation, this is the scenario where we have to introduce, create a little bit of crack in the minds of people so that they understand the value of love and compassion. And when this is the situation, how do we help people understand that spiritual love and a compassionate approach are essential if we want to create sustainable and resilient communities? Is this a possibility at all? If it is, what are the practical ways you would suggest to help create the necessary awareness in people? And what, according to you, is spiritual love and compassion? So I request His Excellency to respond to us, to explain his view of this situation, this scenario.
Thank you very much, Mr. Swami. I was given an advice before I came on the stage. My wife told me to be brief, very. He said, don't talk too much. And I promised her that I will not do so. It is nice, it is wonderful if you are the last speaker, because you don't have to say much. Everything that I need to say has been said about compassion. But there are few who said something that caught my attention. And before I respond to what the introductory statement mentioned, I would have to delve into that just a little bit. Dr. Sivan mentioned about compassion being an innate quality. And Mr. Nair, IAS, also mentioned about compassionate reinforcement. These are two critical components. My belief is that compassion is innate, but compassion is also determined by environment. We are all born with compassion, but our environment determines whether we will be compassionate or non-compassionate. And this will bring me to Mr. Swami's statement. He did mention two cases, scenarios. The first one was a compassionate, famous Ama, and his love for people and communities, and his outreach to communities. To be wicked, not to be human. And I don't think we want that kind of parenthood. And this will bring me to my statement about compassion. And the topic, spiritual love and a compassionate approach as driving forces for sustainable and resilient communities. I will start with the phrase Vasudeva Kutumbagam. The world is one family. This phrase is a loaded phrase, but it's a true phrase. It is real. The Quran also teaches us that we are all, as human beings, we are created from a single male and a female. That Quranic verse is similar to this Vedic statement. We are one family. We are all from a single female and a male. This is true. This is the reality. So therefore, we should feel for one another. We should all have empathy, compassion. But do we all have compassion? No, we don't. Not all of us do have compassion. The example that he gave is a woman that has no compassion. We have to learn to be compassionate, but we cannot legislate a compassionate behavior. We cannot do that. But the society and the policy makers do have a role to play, whether we have a compassionate community, a resilient community or not. If the policies are not geared towards uplifting others, we will not have a compassionate society. We will not. We are all gathered here today from a different continent, from different continents and different countries. We speak different native tongues from different races, tribes, but we are unified by love, compassion, and the pursuit to make life livable for all of us and for our progeny. That is our objective here. That's why we are here, and we are talking about spiritual love, compassion, and resiliency, resilient communities. Spiritual love is not confined to religion or religious affiliation. Spiritual love is a philosophy of life that brought us together with the single objective of making life better for all of us, to help build each other up, to have better education, better health, to have clean environments, and to have communities where all members trust each other and can rely on each other for support. This is spiritual love, and this is compassion. You can be religious, you can be spiritual, and yet still you are not compassionate. But if you have spiritual love, obviously, you'll be compassionate. They go hand in hand. Imagine if all of us should come together to lift one another. No one will be left behind. How prosperous each of us will be. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Just 1 more minute.
Let me borrow a quote from Amma. She said, when love comes, divine love, compassion also fills the heart. When love becomes divine love, compassion also fills the heart. Love is inner feeling, and compassion is its expression. Compassion is expressing your heartfelt concern for someone, for a suffering human being. Therefore, love and compassion are two sides of the same coin. They coexist. When CSOs identify communities they work with on sustainable development projects to assist them in building their communities, self-help projects, and that is showing compassion. The Gambia High Commission has proposed a clean water project with Amrita University under the guidance of AMA to help poor rural women of the Gambia, and we'll be working on that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you, His Excellency. He pointed out that compassion is innate, is inherent, which is true, Compassion is our fundamental nature. And he also mentioned that in order for compassion to express itself in action, we need to create the right environment. So now my question to Sri Sonam Bhatia is that if compassion is our innate nature, our innate quality, why are we not able to practice it? Why are we able to express it in our actions, in our thoughts? And what is the kind of environment we need to create? And where do we create that environment? Is my question clear, Swami? Yes. Okay.
tabje to je shake rek son to jenge me to dege ponzomba serge lembo tawra je be go shake jabo chela chakcha lo माता शत्रु पीता भैरे ये न बालो न पठति न शोभा दे सभा मदे हंस मदे बको यथा। ये क्या है कि सदा दूसरों को प्यार, मैत्री, करुणा, सद्भाव रखना चाहिए। मैत्री करुणा से सारा संसार टिका हुआ है। मैत्री करुणा अभ्यास करते समय हमेशा अपने सुख दूसरों को देना है और दूसरों के दुख को लेना है। संसार में मैत्री करुणा या हमारे तिब्बती भाषा में इंगजी बोलता है और चंबा, इंगजी और चंबा इस कारण के साधना न होने के कारण संसार में लड़ाई झगड़ा होता है। हर प्राणी को संसार में जीने का अधिकार है। फल भर के जीवन में हमेशा सभी से मिलजुल कर रहना चाहिए और संसार में सब प्राणी सुख चाहने वाला है, दुख चाहने वाला कोई नहीं है। दुखों का मुख्य कारण जो है वह अभिवादा के कारण से हो राग द्वेष मोह उत्पन्न होता है। ये तिब्बती भाषा में थुक्सुम बोलता है, द्वेषा शिदातिग्मो। जब सभी प्राणी राग द्वेष मोह को निरंतर नहीं करते तब तक सुख प्राप्त होने वाला नहीं है। जो भी प्राणी दुख भोगता है उसका मुख्य कारण अभिवादा है। इसीलिए जो दुख प्राणी है उसको मैत्री कारण का भावना रखना चाहिए। अपने अपने कर्म के कारण सुख दुख भोगता है। हमें हमेशा सभी प्राणी का दुख निरंतर करने हेतु सद्भाव बोधि भावना अथवा मैत्री कारण के भावना उत्पन्न करना सीखें। तब हमारे ये तिब्बत भाषा में क्या बोलते हैं, जंबलपो चित्र खेम्बातंग कुंतो जंगबो थिया थिचिंते थिदा किंगे जेसु दा लोब्जुरते ग्यावा थिदा थमचे राब्तुंगो बोल के ऐसे बोलता है। तब इसी के कारण सद्भाव या करुणा को सबसे मिलकर इसको सीखना चाहिए। सर्वमंगलम।
So, I would repeat the same question to Ambassador Margaret Kyogire. If love and compassion is our real nature, as His Excellency said, mentioned in his address, why is it so difficult for us to practice it? Why is society deteriorating in all aspects? And what is the difficulty and what is the kind of environment or the atmosphere that we need to create? Where? Because, the environment, it's not, we cannot create an environment everywhere. We have certain limitations. We can create it somewhere, and where is that? And what kind of environment is that?
I have been...
If you could closer. Sit closer, please, to the microphone.
I have been brought up to believe that God is love, and that God and His love dwell in a human being. And I think the only way love can be preserved and can be allowed to continue and express itself in compassion, in humility, and all that goes with love is by the human being keeping very, very close to God, challenging that love. So many nasty things happen around that challenge that love, but that love has got to be strong enough to overcome those challenges, or to look at those challenges as opportunities for practicing love more, thus strengthening it further. That's what I think. I think the essence of it all is God.
Can I ask you a question, if you permit?
Yes.
What is God, according to you?
According to me, God is the creator, not only of man, but that the whole universe and all that there is in it.
Because when you say God, because we are talking for the general public, and we are talking about how to cultivate love and compassion in a practical manner. That's the only way we can help society as a whole. I mean, it has to be something concrete, tangible. So when we say God, it is abstract. It is incomprehensible. And no, people don't understand. If I say cow, people understand because you see the cow. Cow has a form. But when we say God, what is God? And how do we see God? How do we connect God? How do we feel God's compassion within us? In a practical way, how do we encourage people to connect with God? And what kind of environment do we create and where?
I think what we go through and manage to go out of it without giving any reason from ourselves. We are not the ones who have rescued us from that situation. We do realize that there is a bigger power, a spiritual power that has been with us, that has enabled us to go through it. And if we can know that other people are just like us, then we should know that what we go through is what they go through, and we should be more willing to help them, to sustain them, to uplift them.
Where does that bigger power dwell? Does we as individuals have any connection with that bigger power? Because only if I have that connection will I be able to feel it, experience it, and transmit it to others.
Yes, I believe if you are in connection, in contact with the source of it, then you feel it. And when you know that other people are created by the same person and you are like them, then you will know that whatever hurts you hurts them, and when they are hurting, you should see yourself being the one who is being hurt. So I don't know whether when we practice compassion and help somebody, whether it is that somebody we are working on or ourselves. Because you see pain in somebody and you are trying to eliminate that pain, but it's you who knows, you have understood the pain. So really, are you satisfying yourself by relieving that pain, or is it absolutely helping the other person? I think the two of you are in it.
Okay, thank you. Professor Vinod Menon, would you like to enlighten us on this question, on this topic? The same question, the same...
Actually, these are troubling questions, and I'm sure that these questions have been troubling.
No, my question is...
Yes.
We are talking about spiritual love, a compassionate approach as a driving force to help rebuild society.
Yes.
For sustainable, that would help sustainable development and resilient communities. How do we do that? How do we practice it? Is it possible at all? And what kind of environment and what God has to do with this?
Right. I think, since we have two distinguished diplomats from Africa, from Uganda and Gambia on this panel, I would like to mention that their thought in Africa about Ubuntu is something which we need to understand. And Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, which we are talking about, one earth, one family, one future, is also talking about compassion. So love and compassion and spiritual love are all part of the same thing of an ultimate human value, which I think all of us have individually. But I think because we are also with academics and we listen to a lot of presentations on natural language processing, and Dr. Krishnashree is there, I would like to pose a challenge in terms of, provoke her to think about natural language processing to become, neuro-linguistic programming to put the software into the minds of all the people in the planet Earth by making passion for compassion as a human value. If it is a neuro-linguistic programming, which is also NLP, and natural language processing can also get combined into some way in which we can touch the minds of the people to think with the heart, where we do not have anger or hatred, but we have love and compassion as a human value in everybody, I think that is spirituality. That is humanity. And I think if we can actually work towards that and get the children, youth, women, elderly people, and let the children learn from the elderly people, and elderly people also learn from children about what is actually true love and compassion. Can we use all the digital media which we have, all the mobile applications and all the software programs which we have to actually send these kind of messages rather than fake messages on WhatsApp or on Twitter? Can we look at positive vibrations which can come from spiritual leaders and religious leaders without looking into religion as a dividing factor, but looking at faith as a unifier? So I think if that can happen, and if the motto of C20, which is "You are the light," which is each person is actually going to be that light which can actually brighten the world around us through compassion, through attempts to look at poverty, deprivation, hunger, and also people who are facing problems, people who are in pain. Can we actually use this opportunity to really reach out? I think that is probably the challenge. So I would like to say that interfaith consultations are important. It should not be seen as only one religion, but secular kind of harmony. If we can actually bring that in, I think that will be very useful. I would like to just mention two very famous poems. One is by Ralph Waldo Emerson called "Success." To laugh often and much, to win the affection of intelligent people and endure the betrayal of false friends, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you lived, this is to have succeeded. So I think what most of the people are doing now is to really look at compassion to help the people who are suffering. You see a lot of pain around us. You see a lot of depression. You see a lot of tension. You see a lot of stress. Can we unwind that stress into some creative way in which we can actually help the people who really need help? There is also another poem which says, "My Soul Has a Hat" by Mario de Andrade. Last two lines I will mention. It says, "We all have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one." I think we are all in our second life. And if we can take that message that COVID has actually taught us that human life is so fragile. So if love and compassion and spirituality can really become, something which will help all of us to think from the heart, I think that will be true love and compassion. Thank you.
Okay, so Professor Menon said that passion for compassion. And I would say, slightly modified, passion should transform itself into compassion. And he also said that the parents should inculcate spiritual love. I think that's what, Okay, so anyways, I personally think that parents need more education, spiritual education. They need more learning about values. Only if the parents are knowledgeable about spirituality will they be able to transmit that into their children. And secularism, as he mentioned, I don't know where it exists. Anyway, we are not going to discuss a lot about that. I also remember a famous quote by Shakespeare. He says, "Love everyone, trust a few." I would modify it slightly. Love everyone, trust none. God alone, trust the God within you, not God outside there, because there is no God outside there. And to elaborate on that, if there is God outside there, everything is God. There's nothing but God. It's like going to a jewelry shop, a golden, where they have all types of golden ornaments. And if you ask, where is gold? Where is gold? Right here. God is right here. That's why the Upanishads say, Iha atra aiva. Means here. Where is God? God is here. Where is happiness? Here is happiness. Right here in this moment. And where is that? It is within you. You create the atmosphere. Where? In your within and outside. At home first. Amma, I remember a beautiful example of Amma. Samskaram. That's a Sanskrit word, samskaram. You should have the samskaram, they say. Samskaram means the innate, inherited qualities. The disposition, the inner disposition. The English translation for samskaram is culture. Culture. The culture, the word culture has another meaning. This is Amma's example. Culture, the word culture has another meaning. You send your stools, your saliva, or your mucus, your urine, to culture in a laboratory, right? And what happens there? They keep the stools in a certain atmosphere, where a bacterial growth takes place. Where? Inside. And that's culture. Likewise, an atmosphere needs to be created within our houses so that culture happens or grows within each and everyone. So it is an internal growth, and that should happen in the houses. So now, my question to Dr. Bhavani Rao is, Amma says, regardless of time and space, fire always remains hot, and as honey doesn't lose its sweetness, so too love and peace are universal values. Wherever you take fire, it always remains hot. Wherever you take honey, it always remains sweet. Likewise, love and peace, they are universal. However, certain religious faiths have difficulty accepting others. They don't accept God is one. They don't accept love is God, even though the fundamental principle of all religions is love, is compassion. So a real transformation is not possible unless at least 10 to 20% of the total population of the world awakens to these universal values. In this situation, how do we achieve sustainable and resilient communities through love and compassion, since some sections of society refuse to cooperate and remain aloof from all efforts? Dr. Bhavani Rao, kindly enlighten us.
Okay, I have to tell you there's something inherently unfair about this whole thing. First, I'm sitting in front of Swamiji. It's like sitting in front of somebody who has all the answers and asks you a question. One. Second, I got the toughest question to answer. But I will try with my limited knowledge. And so if there's anything that I say that is wrong, please forgive me. So I answer this question from my perspective and my intersectionality, and it is limited in its knowledge, in its experience, and its depth. So if there is any mistake I make, I already ask you for your forgiveness. Loaded question. All religions have love, peace, compassion, charity as its fundamental values, no matter where you go, no matter what religion you take. Do people practice it? I don't think so. There are other values that drive them in all religions. There is no religion that is completely tolerant, even though the fundamental principles that every religion extols are the same values. And so therefore you have love and compassion as a core value of every religious existence. But I think people are driven by greed, selfishness, and they repackage these values under religion. That's why we have wars in the name of religion. It's not for religion. Amma has this beautiful saying. She said, people are willing to die for their religion but not willing to live by it. It's because we don't really We're not really living by the values of our religion, but we're living by values that we feel are important, or we don't even recognize. They're our values of selfishness, and I'm sorry if I'm defining them as values, but that's what drives us. Our selfishness, our greed, our apathy. And therefore, I think to package, I do not think that that it is a religious divide, and I think it's really inherent, just as love and compassion is inherent in all human beings, so is selfishness, greed, ego, is also inherent in all human beings. And it's the question of which values do we seek to culture. Amma also gives a very wonderful story about, and I think this is also something that we have read in plenty of WhatsApp forwards, of an old man talking to his son about who do you feed? Do you feed the wolves, or do you feed? It's what you nurture within you that actually grows and then transforms us. So if we choose to feed the values of compassion and love, and that's what we will be. And if you choose to feed avarice and selfishness, then that's what we will be as human beings. That said, I would like to also go back to an old story from one of our sacred texts. And this is when the three kinds of people. I would like to refer to the story because Swamiji did refer to different kinds of people or different kinds of faiths and beliefs. So this story goes back to the preceptor, who's like God, is met by his people, which are the gods, the demons, and the humans. And they ask God, give us your instruction. So the gods are people who are wealthy and happy, and they have everything. The humans are like us, and neither here nor there. The demons are cruel, forceful beings. And so the God just utters one word. He says the word da. And that's all, and he goes silent. And the three races, or three beings, types of beings, try to interpret this one instruction as it applies to them. So the demons, they think that da means daya, which is compassion. They feel that this is a fundamental value that they need to change how they are supposed to be. They are supposed to be kind, they're supposed to be loving, they're supposed to be considerate of the other. The humans take the word da to mean dana, which means to give, charity, to share. And the gods interpret this word to be dhamma, which means self-control. We are in a place where the gods, the humans, and the demons are within ourselves. Swamiji said everything is within us. We are, at any point of time, we can be really atrocious. We can be selfish, and we can be extravagant. And we can be the opposite of all those three. But we need to basically cultivate these three values within ourselves. And to me, in this lies total sustainability and sustainable communities. Why? Everything starts with compassion. So it's the root value. Amma says very, very simply, there are two kinds of poverty. One is that of food, clothing, and shelter, and the second one is a poverty of love and compassion. If you address the second kind of poverty first, that is, if you do have love and compassion, automatically you address the first kind of poverty, which is a lack of food, clothing, and shelter. So compassion is the start of everything. So if we do awaken compassion, what follows next is charity, right? We give, we share, not just with people outside, but also within your own family. You start creating that atmosphere of sharing within the family, then extends beyond. But to make something sustainable, it's not enough to have just these two. It's also self-control. It is not taking more than what you need. Dhamma, self-control. Not going beyond a certain limit. Even in human interactions, you have control over your temper, control over your needs. All these three is super critical towards sustainable living, and its root comes from compassion. And I feel that these three are integrated within us. I know it's a little bit of a digression, but I feel also that it takes a huge amount of pressure for us to know what is really in our hearts. Compassion and love are very nice when we talk about it, and we probably sitting here feel really good about it. But are we really compassionate? Only times of real criticality can really tell you whether we have compassion in our hearts and if it is our driving force. Let me draw upon, sorry Swamiji if I take a little bit more time, another story that I read in a book called The Pianist. This is during the Nazi Holocaust, and people were shoved into ghettos, and very rich people were shoved into little houses with very poor people, and they had to struggle and fight for even small things like bread or water. And at times like that, people who were like so sophisticated, so noble, so generous, were seen fighting in the lines for that little piece of bread. At the same time, somebody who was a charlatan would take his piece of bread and give it to a poor, hungry girl. Extremities bring out what is there in us. So when we are talking about love and compassion and all generosity over here, it's one thing. But when we are in that spot, can we really be loving and compassionate? Only that circumstance can tell us. And we need to know that, and we need to strive to make sure that we are able to be compassionate in the most extreme of situations. I think we are at that kind of a situation now. Somebody recently showed a slide, biodiversity loss, species extinctions, it's in our face. So when we are going to actually see the end of the world, so to speak, can we be love and compassionate to the others? Can we actually have Dhamma, self-control? You need to have that if you really are compassionate. They're all linked. So how we lead our lives, how we take every step, it is a reflection of true compassion. And in my life, I've seen only like very, very few people embody that compassion like Amma, where you know that every single moment of hers is in that integrity. And that is the level of integrity which we need to each one of us have. It's not enough to speak about compassion. It needs to be an active existence, an active action bit. So when Swamiji was asking, how do we bring it into our lives? Every act of ours should reflect that compassion. That's what, I've not gotten there, but theoretically.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani Rao. So I think it's, it is time to conclude. We have the valedictory function very soon. So before concluding, love and compassion, they're one and the same. Compassion is the purest form of love. And as we started, when we started the discussion, His Excellency said, compassion is our nature, is the fundamental principle or inherent, innate. It's true. That's the truth. That alone is the truth. For example, when we are alone, I mean, we are still unmarried, for example, and you marry someone, what happens there? When you marry someone, a stranger is coming to your life. A husband, a wife is coming to your life. And what's happening? What is happening? No, you are creating space within you for one more person. So far you were all alone. You lived only for yourself. You were selfish, narrow-minded. But now a stranger walks into your life and you create space. One more person. And then children, you create more space. Right? And grandchildren, you create more space. And then you have a joint family system. Then you create more space. The same expansiveness should happen within. And that's how love transforms into compassion. The more expansiveness you create within you, the more love you have. The more love you have, the more compassionate you become. So it is one and the same. I recently was conversing with a doctor, young doctor. He was a surgeon. And he told me, Swamiji, this human body is so miserable. It's really, it's really horrible. You know, all the blood and the flesh and all the intestines and all the things that's within us. Yuck. And then, after some time, he began speaking about his girlfriend. Okay? And then he started becoming very emotional. He said, "Oh, Swamiji, you know what? My parents are not allowing me to marry this girl. I really love her. I cannot live with her." Now tell me, what is this love? See the contradiction? The first half of the conversation, the doctor was talking about the averse nature of this body. And the second part of the conversation, he was talking about love. And he became so emotional. So what is love? It's something beyond. It's not something you can limit within your body, within the framework of your body. It's beyond. So when you come in touch with that beyondness, the God, but that God is not sitting, as Amma says, that God is not sitting up above the clouds in a golden throne, punishing people, judging people. No, that God is within us. Unless you awaken that God within us, you cannot connect with nature. That attitude has to change. We have these schools, Amrita Vidyalayam, we have nearly 100 schools across the country. And we have a program. We give saplings to the children. And we tell the children it is the responsibility of each and every children to plant the tree, the sapling, and water them every day and see that the plant grows well protected. And each child is supposed to go near the plant every evening before they leave and talk to the plant, say kind words, caress. And during vacation, summer vacation, we have seen that these children approaches the sapling and says, "Don't worry, don't feel sad. Don't feel sad. I will be back soon and someone is here to take care of you." So, this world, this earth is not only for human beings. So, we were talking about gender equality. When you say gender equality, it is for the entire creation, not just human beings. So, the entire creation is God. His consciousness, His life. It's a totality of life. So unless that change in attitude happens, this will just remain as intellectual exercise. Whatever conference we do, whatever discussions we hold, nothing is going to change. So change in attitude. That's most important. Thank you so much. Thank you for the respected participants, Excellencies, Dr. Bhavani Rao Swami, Professor Vinod Menon, all the delegates, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji, for moderating the session, and thank you, the panelists, for your valuable talk. Certainly led all of us to think deeper. We will now move on to the valedictory event. It's going to start shortly at 5 p.m. sharp. I request everyone to kindly remain seated. Please do not leave the hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.